On a humid summer night in 2019, the most guarded secret in modern power broke open when federal agents smashed through the 30-ton oak doors of a Manhattan mansion. Inside the 7-story palace on East 71st Street, they found a safe the size of a small room, fireproof filing cabinets locked with biometric scanners, and thousands of compact discs labeled with the names of some of the most famous men on Earth. Jeffrey Epstein, the billionaire financier who had spent decades ferrying presidents, princes, prime ministers, and celebrities to his private Caribbean island, was finally in handcuffs. The world exhaled. Justice, it seemed, had arrived. But 6 weeks later, on the morning of August 10th, Epstein was found dead in his cell, officially a suicide. Unofficially, the moment the most explosive blackmail archive in history vanished into the hands of people who have spent every day since making sure it stays buried. What you are about to hear is not the story the media moved on from. It is the story they were paid, pressured, and terrified into abandoning, because the Epstein files did not disappear. They were absorbed, redacted, and weaponized, and in 2025, they are still the invisible strings that decide who rises and who falls in Washington and London. Most people believe Epstein was simply a monstrous paedophile with powerful friends. That version is comforting because it keeps the horror individual. The truth is far colder. Epstein was never the mastermind. He was the manager. For almost 30 years, he ran the most sophisticated honey trap operation ever constructed, one that did not merely record compromising material, but catalogued it, indexed it, and stored it in multiple jurisdictions under the direct oversight of intelligence professionals who understood that sexual blackmail is the single most effective form of permanent control. The island, Little St. James, with its golden dome and its hidden cameras in every bedroom, was only the showroom. The real operation ran through encrypted servers in New York, through shell companies in the Virgin Islands, through safety deposit boxes in Paris and Geneva, and most crucially, through relationships with agencies that have spent the last 6 years pretending they barely knew him. Let us begin with the names you already think you know. Bill Clinton, 26 flights on the Lolita Express, multiple visits to the island always, his Secret Service detail mysteriously left behind. Prince Andrew, photographed with his arm around a 17-year-old girl, while Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's partner and procurer, looks on smiling. Donald Trump boasting in 2002 that Epstein liked them on the younger side, then suddenly banning him from Mar-a-Lago. The moment the rumors turned into evidence, Alan Dershowitz, Bill Gates, Leon Black, Lee Wexner, Ehud Barak, Tony Blair, even whispers around members of the British royal household who have never been photographed but whose private secretaries allegedly arranged massages. These are the names the public argues about. They are not the names that matter most. They are the decoys, the famous faces deliberately left in plain sight, so that no one ever looks one layer deeper where the real clients live. Because hidden beneath the politicians and celebrities was a far smaller, far more powerful circle. Men and women whose public profiles are so clean they barely exist at all. Senior partners at the most prestigious law firms that write international treaties. Board members of the charities that advise the World Health Organization. Editors of newspapers you still trust. Intelligence liaison officers who moved between Langley, Vauxhall Cross and Tel Aviv without ever changing business cards. These are the people who never set foot on the island. They didn't need to. Epstein flew the girls to them in New York penthouses, in London townhouses registered to offshore trusts, in Alpine chalets during Davos week, in desert compounds outside Riyadh. The cameras were already waiting, installed by private security firms whose founders once ran kidnapping operations for Western agencies. Every encounter was filmed from multiple angles, audio recorded, GPS logged, DNA preserved when required. The participants were never told they were being recorded. They were told they were among friends. By the time Epstein was first arrested in 2008, the archive already contained thousands of hours of material that could end marriages, destroy careers, collapse share prices, even topple governments. Yet instead of prison, Epstein received what prosecutors later called the deal of the century: 13 months in a private wing of a county jail, work released 6 days a week, to an office where the trafficking continued. The architect of that deal was Alexander Acosta, the U.S. Attorney for Southern District of Florida, who would later tell Trump's transition team that he backed off because he had been told Epstein belonged to intelligence and was above his pay grade. Acosta was rewarded with Secretary of Labor. The message was clear. The operation had protection at the very highest levels, and that protection did not end when Epstein went to prison the second time. When Epstein died, the hard drives from the New York mansion were seized by the FBI's New York field office. Within hours, according to multiple agents who spoke anonymously, senior officials arrived from Washington and removed the most sensitive materials. The same thing happened with the contents of his Palm Beach safe and the underground server room on Little St. James. By the time the court-ordered inventory was filed, entire categories of evidence had been reclassified under national security provisions. Victims' lawyers were shown heavily, redacted pages and told the rest pertained to ongoing intelligence matters. Virginia Giuffre's deposition, in which she named specific intelligence connections, was sealed. Sarah Ransom's emails describing videotapes of prominent figures were dismissed as not credible, despite the fact that the tapes themselves were never produced to test her credibility. The judge who oversaw the Maxwell trial forbade any mention of the client tapes, ruling they were not relevant. The public was left with one fall guy already dead and one spoiled heiress in prison, while the system that created them carried on untouched. But the files did not simply vanish, they were redistributed. In the intelligence community, this is known as continuity of leverage. When one asset becomes too hot, the material is transferred to quieter hands. Former Israeli intelligence officials have privately confirmed that a substantial portion of the archive was moved to Tel Aviv years before Epstein's death, stored under military-grade encryption with access, granted only to a joint task force that includes American and British officers. Another copy, according to French investigative reporters, resides in a vault beneath a private bank in Liechtenstein controlled by a trust, ultimately linked to the Vatican. A third, heavily edited version is said to have been used by certain three-letter agencies to secure policy compliance from lawmakers who suddenly reversed positions on everything from tech, regulation to Middle East peace plans. When Senator X votes against breaking up big tech, or when a British minister quietly drops an inquiry into Saudi funding of extremism, no one needs to threaten exposure anymore. A single encrypted email with a 30-second clip is enough. And that is why, in 2025, the Epstein is still winning. The men and women who partied on his island or in his mansions now sit on the boards of the organizations shaping artificial intelligence governance, vaccine distribution policy, central bank digital currencies, and the next generation of surveillance tools. The same law firms that defended him now advise governments on disinformation, the same private intelligence. Companies that installed his cameras now sell facial recognition software to police departments across the Western world. The island was bulldozed, the temple dome painted over, the guest logs shredded, but the leverage lives on, upgraded, cloud-backed, and more powerful than ever. Every time a politician who once flew on the Lolita Express warns about foreign interference or deep state conspiracies, remember that the deepest state of all is the one holding the files no grand jury will ever see. The victims, meanwhile, are still fighting. Virginia Giuffre, Maria Farmer, Annie Farmer, Courtney Wild, dozens of women whose lives were stolen, continue to demand the full truth. They are told, year after year, that releasing more documents would endanger national security. They are told the same lie that was told to the families of 9/11 victims when Saudi involvement was covered up. The same lie told to the survivors of CIA mind control experiments. The same lie told whenever the powerful need the crimes of the powerful to disappear. But cracks are appearing. Whistleblowers inside agencies are leaking fragments. Independent researchers are piecing together flight logs, financial records, court filings from half a dozen countries, and the younger generation, raised on distrust and raised on leaks, is no longer willing to accept the comforting fairy tale that one dead billionaire acted alone. So here we are in 2025, 6 years after Epstein's death, and the question is no longer who was on the list. The question is, who is still being controlled by it? Because as long as those files exist, locked away in vaults and servers and classified appendices, the men who raped children walk free. The women who procured them give TED Talks, and the institutions that protected them write the rules for the rest of us. The Epstein case was never about one man or one island. It was the moment the mask slipped just for a second, and we saw the machinery underneath. A machine that does not care about left or right, red or blue, America or Britain. It cares only about power, and it keeps that power the old-fashioned way, by owning the secrets that could destroy the powerful. The story is not over. It has simply gone quiet, waiting for the next brave lawyer, the next defiant victim, the next honest journalist, or the next catastrophic leak that finally forces the entire archive into daylight. Until then, every time you see a politician reverse course overnight, every time a scandal mysteriously dies, every time a powerful men warn you about threats they themselves embody, remember the island, remember the cameras, remember the files. They are still out there. They are still working, and they are still deciding who runs the world.